Good to go?
See. Welcome to the Broker Loaded podcast, everybody. I'm Kurt Studley.
And I'm Dan Grimes.
Dan needs to talk first when we open the podcast. I just want to let you know this is episode 3 of our wonderful little podcast all about real estate. It's called the Broker Loaded podcast. I'm very happy that you painted the walls. For those who watch this, and most people, by the way, I'm trying to teach Danny that apparently most people listen to podcasts. They don't watch them. But anyway, I'm glad you painted the walls.
I did, and I'm glad you don't have a black shirt on
See,
today.
there was 2 problems there.
You were a
Black
talking
on
head.
black. Yeah, I was floating around like, as a puppet.
It's unbelievable.
Anyway, we're here on, a weekly basis. We're trying to make it weekly to talk about the things, all things real estate, issues related to real estate. And this week's topic is an interesting one. The title of this podcast is COVID Concerns, Vaccinations in Real Estate. Now, let's start with when COVID hit. It meant different things for real estate. And like everything else on this planet and in this country and in this province and so on and so forth, we had to adjust on the fly, right?
We did.
And we did.
Yeah.
Right?
There were a lot of changes in our industry.
Right. So the first thing was that, I thought the industry would shut down, like almost completely for a while, but it didn't. It went the other direction.
Well, in Ontario, it stayed open with restrictions, but let's not forget, right across the border in the river, Quebec did shut down.
That's right. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Here in Ontario, we did not, though. In many other locales across the country, it didn't shut down. We experienced the opposite of shutting down. The thing exploded when it came to real estate.
It did.
Got really busy and so on. But we had to enact some policies, some restrictions, some ways of trying to keep people safe in line with public health policies of that time, right?
Yeah, well, really, if I remember correctly, the beginning of it, we really didn't know what we were dealing with. Right. And in the real estate industry, where you have members of the public, don't forget, when we go back to the beginning of this, we're talking about the pre-vaccination era.
That's right. That's right.
So we had to, kind of move quickly, and the province banned open houses for one. That was a start.
They were completely shut down.
They were shut down. And then any of the showing protocols, there were very few homes. I remember it. Instead of candy out for the kids on Halloween, there were rubber gloves, masks, and the sterile gel to wash off your hands.
Hand sanitizer. I went out and I bought all that stuff, boxes of masks and gloves, and I had them, any listings I had at the time.
Right.
That's what greeted the buyers who came through the door.
Exactly. But now we're living in the vaccination era.
Right. So we're going to kind of update the situation when it comes to real estate, because a lot of things have certainly changed and evolved since COVID first came into play, and that is certainly the situation when it comes to real estate in this country.
Yeah, the topic today is, I think, is your realtor, the people coming through your homes, vaccinated, or is it even important to you?
Yeah, who's vaccinated, who isn't in real estate, and do you care?
Well, I think people should care. We go into, for instance, restaurants, and you have to be double vaxxed to go in there.
Now you do.
You can't go to a hockey game without being double vaxxed.
No, you're scanned and all that. You have to show proof of double vaccination.
That's right. Yet, right across the country, with all the homes that are on MLS and all of the showings, and I think we agree, tens of thousands of showings every day across the country.
Across the country, even in Ontario, there's probably.
That's right. So I would think it is somewhat of a potential spreader for the virus, obviously, wouldn't you think?
Well, it's somewhat unregulated. We do have, lots of times, and the general public may not see it, but there's information exchanged through realtors.
That's correct.
And brokerages when you book a showing.
Right.
There may be a document that sets out the brokerage's policy and what should and shouldn't happen. For example, Showings are, for the most part, restricted to 30 minutes now.
That's right.
Not, it's not a law or anything, but that's the thing we kind of abide by. The realtor plus 2 adults are the only ones who can take in the showing. No children are supposed to be allowed. Everyone should wear masks and sanitize their hands and touch as little as possible. Those are some of the things you see not only on documents that realtors see, but when you enter home, sometimes there's signage and so on that tells you what the general sort of policy is.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah, as little as possible.
As
Don't
little
use the
as possible.
washrooms, stuff like that, right? So those are the general rules we've been abiding by.
Right.
And they weren't really set out by anybody. Like they're not set in stone and they're not legal in any way, but that's just a policy that people had to develop at the time.
Oh, that's absolutely. And
Right.
that occurred right across the MLS system,
Yeah.
right across North America for sure.
But who's vaccinated now and who isn't? That's a big question.
Well, it's a big question because when boards across the country, when it was being brought up, I'm going to go back. I think I first contacted our board maybe 4 months ago, wondering. Obviously, there's going to be sellers when they put their home on the MLS system that are not going to want unvaccinated realtors or buyers come through their home.
Right.
At the time, we were told you weren't allowed to restrict anybody from coming through your home. And it falls under an MLS board rule, access to a home.
Right.
And you can't refuse anybody access to your home.
No.
But we're in extraordinary times, and they've been referring to it as a pandemic now for almost 2 years. So the change now, we forwarded, and we thought this topic was timely. We happen to live in a city where half of our professional hockey team is sitting on the sidelines right now, COVID protocol. And they've all been vaccinated, of course. But we contacted 2 boards. And our particular board, I just asked, has there been any discussion or suggestion on how to respond to clients, that being home sellers?
This is the Ottawa Real Estate Board?
It's the Ottawa Real Estate Board. We also contacted people in Calgary. What do we do with clients who don't wish to have unvaccinated realtors or buyers go through their home?
This was the question you posed to our local board.
That's right. And I was expecting... the answer I got back, I wasn't expecting. In fact, there has been a change, and there's been direction through CREA, Canadian Real Estate Association.
Right.
And our representative that I was in contact with at our board sent back and said, well, in fact, now sellers can refuse to have unvaccinated people, be it either a realtor, a buyer, or anybody associated with the sale of the home.
Oh.
So post-sale. So you have either an inspector come in.
Right.
So
An appraiser.
A seller can refuse. A seller can refuse.
Right.
But the issue that I have is the reply or the statement put out by CREA,
Right.
Canadian Real Estate Association, that says that there's a liability. Though we can refuse and the seller can refuse, you do open yourself up to a potential lawsuit. There may be privacy, human right concerns, Competition Bureau.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
We're talking about if a seller
Yep.
decides that they don't want unvaccinated people coming through their home, be they buyers, real estate agents, or otherwise, that there's liability involved?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's at first, like I said before.
So not liability for somebody contracting COVID. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about liability for restricting who can come into your home if it's for sale?
Yeah.
Woo.
And like we always have a pre-discussion before we do these. So, I was mentioning at first I thought I was upset with the board.
The local
board,
Right.
thinking, but then they sent back, sure enough, you're allowed to do it.
Right.
They deferred. They sent me the notice.
Because we're under the Korea umbrella, by the
Yeah,
way.
we're under the Korea
Umbrella. Korea. Korea.
umbrella.
CREA.
Yeah. And I got forwarded the statement and the advice, the release sent out to all members or all boards, and then subsequently was sent out to all members. Further, as it is explained below, vaccine requirements may expose realtors, boards, and associations to the risk of a lawsuit or complaint. A strict vaccination requirement issued by the board could therefore inadvertently expose realtors, boards, and associations to liability. And there's
For
a number.
refusing entry to anybody,
That's right.
basically.
That's right. Legal action, privacy concerns, human rights, the competition law, business practice that prohibits in-person showings from those who are not fully vaccinated unless directed to do so by provincial. This is where my head started to calm down.
Right.
Unless directed to do so by provincial or federal authorities. For this reason, there is a risk of a lawsuit or complaint being made. So just to clarify and to simplify it, it's my understanding, and the people we've talked to and all the literature that we've read,
Yes.
that anybody, you can decide, if you're refused entry to a restaurant, you can sue the restaurant. You can take legal action against the restaurant.
Sure, you could.
It's not going anywhere.
No.
It'll never see a judge.
It's a waste of your time.
Because the province has legislated,
Yes.
which they haven't done in the real estate
So-
industry.
So there's no COVID legislation in the real estate industry? Legislation?
No.
None.
We in order for us to be protected, and I might say the sellers to be protected as well,
Right.
because our experience in a lawsuit in the hands of the legal community, yes, they'll take action against the realtor, the brokerage.
And they'll also include the seller.
How do you not?
Yes.
At the end of the day, they're the ones who request it. That only vaccinated people or double vaccinated people and anyone involved in the transaction come through their home.
Now, when you think about this, so again, to be clear,
Yeah.
you could be liable if you refuse entry to anyone into your home when it's for sale. You could be liable if you say, if you're unvaccinated, you can't come into my home. Well, there could be liabilities involved,
On multiple levels.
right? So, and there's no actual legal legislation in place to remedy that situation at all.
Yeah, I use, maybe I overuse the word legislated, but it here it says, and I did look at the provincial literature as well, unless directed to do so by provincial or federal authorities.
Right.
I think the legislative process would take, it's a process. It takes some time.
Yeah, but the reason, it's alarming is this. And you've used the example of an arena full of hockey fans.
Yeah.
You've used the example of restaurants where it's mandatory. You're not getting in if you can't show proof of double vaccination.
Right.
Yet, in the thousands upon thousands of showings that happen across the country and in each province,
Tens of thousands.
then last year, how many up to October, how many homes were sold?
Actually, yeah, this is CTV, by the way, and they just put this out, updated November 18th. Today's the 19th.
Right.
Up until the end of last month, so the end of October,
Uh-huh.
there was just under 54,000 homes sold across Canada.
54,000.
54,000 homes sold across Canada.
Okay.
In 2021, where there was really no verification or process in place verifying who was coming through your home,
No.
whether they were vaccinated or not.
No. Well, the question wasn't really even asked if you
No.
were vaccinated, or has it been, right?
Well, no, it's been a top. I've asked.
No, I know, but
I mean, I've asked our board.
when I book showings and taken my clients into homes to see them, Sure, they wear masks. Sure, they hand sanitize. Sure, they follow all the protocols. But nobody has asked if you're double vaccinated, right? Since that's come into play, I've not booked a showing where somebody said to me, "Are your clients double vaccinated?"
Okay, you may not want to answer this question, but I will. And I asked you this beforehand. If you had your home, well, you don't even have your home for sale.
Me?
No, I'm just saying you don't. It doesn't matter whether you do or you're not when I'm posing this question.
No.
But would you want 6 people in your home at a gathering and the 6 people aren't vaccinated?
No.
No. Ditto.
Not really. No.
No, I don't want. And there's 2 reasons. So one, they may spread,
Yeah.
but the other concern that you have, and the anti-vaxxers, let's not get all wound up, but I know people that have health issues
Yes.
that chose not to get vaccinated.
Okay.
It's not that I don't want to see them, Kurt,
No.
but like a number of the senators have just learned they had no symptoms, but they were COVID positive.
Right. And bottom line here, Dan, when it comes to vaccinations, you believe what you believe, right? So
Believe what you believe, and I respect anybody's right not to be vaccinated.
right.
But I'd like to look at it from my point of view or our point of view, the general public's point of view, that may have a concern
Mm-hmm.
that I may have it and not know it. And the person that I know, friends of mine that have health issues,
Mm-hmm.
I pass it along to them without even knowing it.
Without
and then
even knowing.
compromise them.
Maybe you're asymptomatic, maybe,
I could be.
and you're double vaxxed, and you don't know.
Well, I mean, 10 or 12 of the Ottawa senators were, and I think 8 or 9 of them said they didn't even have symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of sniffles and
And it kind of shows you how quickly the spread can happen. Using the senators as an example, they were on a road trip to the United States.
that's where it started.
Ended up in Los Angeles. Nobody knows where the first contact was made, but they assume it was in Los Angeles, or when they were in California.
Okay.
And they come back, and all of a sudden, one by one, it's discovered there are positive tests over and over, up to a total of 10.
Yeah.
So, and that's quick. But these are people who think about what they do. They spend a lot of their time together. They're in an athletic environment, so there's bodily fluids all over the place. And then they go home and they see other people, right?
Yeah.
Who are outside the realm
Yeah.
of the hockey arena.
Yep.
So what's the difference between that than putting your home up for sale, having realtors, and let's say it's a townhouse in Canada or wherever it might be,
Sure.
right, in Barhaven, whatever. And I was at one last week where there was 25 or 26 showings over 2 days. So if you multiply that by 3, that's over 100 people, realtors included, who have gone through the doors of this home. I assume all were wearing masks. However, that's not up to me. So that's a lot of people in the space of a short period of time going in and out of a home, and the question is never asked, are any of you vaccinated?
No, they're not. And I feel strongly about it. For those who don't, and most of you don't know, but I mean, I had COVID run through my house, and we were fortunate. There weren't any symptoms, but a few of my son's friends had symptoms. So it just should be. But at the end of the day, I'm of the opinion that realtors, during their marketing presentation, listing presentation, whatever you want to call it, it should be part of your presentation now when you're sitting with a home seller.
That you're vaccinated?
Well, one, the seller should be asking, is a realtor vaccinated?
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But the realtor should be sitting down and saying, listen, are you comfortable with people coming through your home that are not vaccinated, regardless of the protocols, because we know the protocols have been broken. There's so many videos. People are walking through homes. They have security systems. There's people opening the cupboards when there's notes saying don't touch door handles. Everything will be open. There's people using bathrooms. I mean, it's not rampant, but it does happen.
Yep.
You know, there's people that'll pull off their mask just to catch their breath.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody's wearing rubber gloves going through the house.
No.
I don't know anybody who wears rubber gloves going through the house.
I've seen it a few times.
Yeah, a
But
few
that's
times.
it.
Back at the beginning, we were all
Yeah.
suiting up like heart surgeons.
Yes.
But it should be part of your presentation and your explanation for every seller, my opinion, right across Canada, that they should be sitting down and saying there's the potential that people that come through your home, realtors, buyers, and anybody else, appraisers after the fact, home inspectors, when an offer's been accepted, they may not be vaccinated.
Right. So
And-
people should be, first of all, aware of
They
that.
should be aware that this can happen, that we're not dealing with an industry that's being treated like restaurants, professional businesses.
We're talking about the public safety.
Yeah, and it's public opinion they do not want.
Speaking of opinions, you've managed to back up that theory by conducting your own sort of survey.
We did, and we had stat check. One guy make 100 calls to 3 market centers. Randomly called 100 homeowners in Montreal,
Yes?
100 here in Ottawa, and 100 in Calgary.
Now, think about that for a second.
Yeah.
So the question, what was the question that he asked?
Would you feel comfortable allowing any realtor, buyer, or anyone involved in a real estate transaction coming through your home who is not vaccinated? I'm paraphrasing, it's a shorter question, but
Right.
it was a direct question.
The direct question,
Yeah.
would you be comfortable
Yep.
allowing people to come in to your home to look at it if it was for sale, if they were unvaccinated? Would you be okay with that? And
287 out of 300 said no.
Are you? Well,
Said no. Not even. The
that's
question-
more than I thought would say.
And
no.
it's not even a question. In Ottawa, it was 98.
Out of 100.
98 out of 100 people. And we didn't call anybody whose home was already on MLS.
No, you made sure that you didn't. You did not conduct the call. Somebody else did that.
Somebody else.
Yeah.
Somebody else conducted the calls.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So somebody independent of real estate.
287. And it wasn't, would you mind, would you allow, was the question.
Right.
And so it was a yes or no answer.
Right.
Would you allow, yes or no?
287 of
287
300.
people said no.
No. That's a pretty clear message.
The lowest was in Montreal, but it's irrelevant. They're all, when 287 out of 300 in 3 different markets.
That's well weighted toward no.
Well, we didn't have to call 100 in Vancouver.
No.
We knew what the results would be.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. And you may think 300 is a small sample size, not when you get results like that.
no, not.
And in different markets too. So, I mean, we haven't even touched on the idea of open houses.
Poof.
Like they were banned
Yep.
when COVID first came into play,
That's
and
right.
had been for quite some time.
Yes.
And then it was decided that the ban on open houses was over some months ago, correct?
Correct.
How do you feel about open houses? I see their value, and yes, it gets people into your home to see it, but at what risk?
Well, I mean, I haven't done an open house in 3 years, and I don't know. I don't know how realtors are handling. I don't believe realtors are having a discussion with their sellers. The majority of realtors are not. The greater majority of realtors are not having a discussion with their sellers
About COVID? About vaccinations?
About vaccinations.
Well, yeah.
You know, they're not.
They're not having a genuine conversation. I mean, the approach would be, in many circumstances, I'm sure, here's our policy when it comes to showings, and here's how that works, and here's how Like, here's the list of things, masks, hand sanitizer, all that sort of business. But that's about as far as it goes, in your opinion?
Well, if 287 out of 300 people basically across the country say no,
Mm-hmm.
no one, unless they're double vaccinated, is coming into my home.
Mm-hmm.
And I see no reason to believe if we were to randomly ask 100 homeowners on MLS, do you want unvaccinated people coming through your home? The numbers aren't going to change. They may be, they may be slightly lower. So if you pose the same question regarding an open house, I'm having an open house, the market's active. In all likelihood, if it's a well-priced townhome in a neighborhood, any neighborhood right across Canada, the potential to have 25 to 40 people come through your home in that 2 hours is great.
Yes.
So what protocol is the realtor hosting the open house using, and what position does it put that realtor in when he has to sit at the front door and go, can you show me proof of vaccination? Because that's the only way to do it with an open house, because it's the responsibility of the listing realtor. So if you're booking an appointment, I talked to one broker this morning, very active broker this morning, national franchise owner, and I asked, what's the protocol in your office? And they said, we have a waiver, a notice signed that we notify, we have the discussion with the sellers that people that come through your home may be unvaccinated. And if they're okay with it, here's the protocol that we go through. And most of the appointment requests now realtors use across North America are automated online.
Yes.
What's ours called here? Showing time.
Showing time, yes.
And they told me that any property they have where the seller insists on fully vaccinated people coming through, that property, you cannot book an appointment on that property through showing time.
Right. So the option, and before showing time, we used to simply call the office and book it. But in this case, you might, have a direct number to the realtor who would book the showing for you and ask the necessary questions.
Well, yeah, the direction that came out from CREA says it's a responsibility of the listing realtor.
Right.
So all those appointments would have to be made through the listing realtor, which is fine. There aren't going to be, well, there would be a lot of appointments, and we go back to the way it was before showing time, which wasn't very long ago.
No.
And it would be up then to that realtor to confirm that the realtor booking the appointment is fully vaccinated, and are the clients that he's bringing through fully vaccinated.
By the way, you're listening and or watching the Broker Loaded podcast, a podcast all about real estate. And this is episode number 3 called COVID Concerns Vaccinations in Real Estate. The question is, should there be open houses? Now, I know they're available, right? They're allowed.
They're allowed.
But is it... The problem is, you can't ultimately blame realtors, because if a seller wants an open house, you must follow the directions of your seller.
Yes.
And if your seller says, look, I want you to hold an open house, then you have to do it.
You have to do it, but at the same time, you don't want to discourage it.
No.
But I wouldn't be doing an open house I wouldn't host an open house by myself today.
No.
Not during these times. I would want a second realtor there with me.
Right.
And the protocol would be at the front door, you're going to be asked the question.
Mm-hmm.
And if the seller says, I want proof of full vaccination, then
it's up to the realtor to ask for that.
That's right. That could turn into a confrontational situation.
That could be a problem, because, some people are not vaccinated, first of all, and some people aren't comfortable with disclosing whether they are or they aren't, and they have that right.
Now, I'm going to have the support of most experienced realtors out there when I say this, but open houses don't sell homes, and they never have sold homes.
To be completely honest, open houses aren't really designed to sell homes.
No, and they're designed for the realtor hosting the open house to get business.
That's
and
correct. to meet new people.
To
And
meet
there's
new
nothing wrong
people.
with that, but that's ultimately the design.
Well, I was trained almost 40 years ago that when you're hosting an open house, hi Kurt, thank you for coming into the open house. Do you have a home to sell before you buy your next home?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I asking that question? Because that's a potential home that I could put on the market.
Yes. And they're obviously, if they're at an open house, which you're hosting,
Yeah.
there's a good possibility that they're interested in buying a home. It may not be the one they're in, but if they're showing up at an open house on their own, maybe they don't have a realtor.
The stats used to be just around 2% of homes sold through an open house.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's 5. Let me ask you this though. How many, I think everybody can agree the last year and a half has been a flourishing market.
Yes.
Homes haven't
Flourish is a good word.
flourished. I don't know why I chose it, but homes were not on the market for very long.
No.
Did we need open houses to sell homes in the last 2 years?
Not a single one.
Not one.
No.
Not one. I understand they benefit new realtors getting into the business, building up their client database.
Find other ways.
Find other ways.
Yeah.
Find other ways.
What, as we get close to wrapping up
Yep.
our podcast today, Dan, in your estimate, we put a lot of thought into this. In your estimation, and in your opinion, what needs to happen? What should happen when it comes to COVID, the pandemic, and vaccinations related to real estate? What would you like to see happen?
Well, I'd like to see the province give us some direction because everybody that we've talked to, and you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I believe in Ottawa, I didn't check, but if you went on today, between homes for sale and homes for rent, we're low. But I think it's been hovering around 2,500.
Right.
So Toronto, how many homes would they have there? I don't know.
Who knows? Triple, quadruple that.
Quadruple,
Yeah.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I just happen to think, and every homeowner supports it, by far and away the realtors support protecting the public, protecting our client, protecting our own families
Yes.
when we're going into homes.
Right.
I'd like to see the province give some direction like they have to the restaurant industry, like they have to gatherings at Canadian Tire Center. Because
get that.
homeowners, realtors, and brokerages right now aren't protected if they refuse entry.
Now, we fully realize that this is a process, and it took some time to get to the point where, and restaurateurs were up in arms. They wanted something done because they were left with nothing. They couldn't, they were doing takeout. They couldn't have people in. They wanted some sort of direction, some sort of policy, some sort of action taken so they could operate their business properly. And fair enough. And we understand that it takes time, and maybe real estate isn't as high on the pecking order as restaurants and so on and so forth are. But
Well,
when you break it down, and real estate is our business, that's what we talk about on this podcast. So obviously we're going to relate it to COVID and vaccinations and so on and so forth. To us, it seems like there is great potential for the passing on of a virus in a unregulated real estate sort of situation, right? So that's why, we're concerned about this, and that's why we, like others in business and different businesses, are calling on the province to give us some guidelines to go on so we can enact these policies and not, be making up little flyers that we post as people enter saying, okay, here's what we think you should do. Right? We think you should wear a mask, and we think you should sanitize your hands, and we hope you don't touch anything. But there's got to be more meat to a policy than that. Correct?
Yeah, maybe it starts with the realtors. Maybe realtors have to be proactive.
Do we need to band together and put pressure on?
Well, have to band together. At least start having the conversation when you're sitting down with a seller and saying there's the potential that unvaccinated people are going to be coming through your home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a spreader. It's a potential spreader that could be easily avoided.
Right.
And CREA makes it clear. Kurt, I forgot to mention this. At the beginning of COVID, we didn't have access to homes, and we were virtual tours. Were a
Virtual
big
showings,
thing.
yeah.
So they actually say to limit the liability for a homeowner, a realtor, and a brokerage, and anybody else entering the home, virtual tours. Give them an option. They say use an option. So if there is somebody
Mm-hmm.
who takes action against you,
Mm-hmm.
at least you can stand up and say this was an alternative. And in fact, that alternative sold a lot of homes at the start of this.
There's no question about that. I want to stress that as realtors and as, brokerages and so on, and everybody involved in the industry wants nothing more than people to be as safe as possible. But there are times when we're baffled as to exactly what direction and what policies we should, put in place to ensure that's the case. But ultimately, that's our biggest concern, the safety of
Sure.
the general public, realtors, and their families included, right?
Absolutely.
So there's got to be a way to find some common ground where we can establish what those guidelines are even further than we are at the present time.
And that could be done through communication through our local board levels right across the country, frankly, right across North America,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and CREA. But I think it has to start with the realtors. I mean, I hope somebody in government watches this, because I think it's
or listens to it.
Or listening to
'Cause
it.
it's a podcast.
Why'd I paint the office then? Jeez.
Just because it was
I'm
dark
gonna
and
paint it
dreary.
black again. I like black.
We always welcome your comments, your feedback on this podcast and on real estate in general. We want to know what topics you want us to cover and how you feel about them.
Absolutely.
So there's a way for people to send us messages, right?
Right along the bottom of the screen,
Right.
brokerloadedpodcast@gmail.com.
That's our email address.
That's our email address. They can also go to our Facebook page,
We have a Facebook page.
the Broker Loaded Podcast,
Right.
and our YouTube channel called
The Broker Loaded Podcast.
Ironic.
It's amazing how we pulled this all together.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
Thanks so much for being a part of our podcast today, and we look forward to talking to you next time on the Broker Loaded Podcast. See you, Dan. See ya.
See you, Kurt.
Bye-bye.